Nongoma, KwaNongoma in KwaZulu-Natal. It's where we find my colleague Ayanda Mhlongo, who's standing by. Ayanda, a very good morning to you once again. Ukutshala, or as we've been referring to it, as the planting of the king. It was a private ceremony that happened yesterday in the early hours of this morning as well. What do we know about the process that led up to it, as well as what follows?
Yeah, very good morning to you, Blaine. And as you were saying, that the ceremony that is called in isiZulu ukutshalwa ngonyama, which is the planting of the king. That ceremony, as you know, Blaine, the royal family has kept it private. They're saying that they could not share the details of what exactly happened. What we do know is that those who participated in that private burial were males. We know that the king's praise singer, the likes of Ubaba Obuzecheni Mdleche, he was part of that process. We know that the royal chaplain was also there to provide prayers, and we know that Amabutu, the warriors, were also part of that process. Of course, yesterday we remember that the king's body was collected from a local mortuary and brought here to KwaKhethomthandayo Royal Palace, and the rituals that would take place, Blaine, at every one of those points. There was a ritual that was conducted when the king's body was collected at the mortuary. There was rituals that was done once the king had arrived here at the palace. In fact, before entering the palace gates, just outside where we are, the coffin was then taken out to where the traditional leaders and other amakosi were, and there was a ritual that was performed before the body was then taken inside. From where we've been observing from outside, Blaine, inside, and one of the things we possibly haven't been spoken about was that there was a hut that was being erected over the past few days, and that was the hut that we understand once the king's body was taken inside the royal palace, it was then going to be placed in that hut, and then other rituals were then going to be performed. We know again when they removed His Majesty's body from KwaKhethomthandayo, again there was a little ceremony that was then conducted as they made their way to eMahashini, which was his final resting place at KwaDlamahlahla Royal Palace. So those are the details, Blaine, that we've been able to pick up. But in terms of the actual process and what is done and how the actual burial is conducted, that is information that, aside from those that were there, the members of the royal family, that is a secret that many of us will possibly never know. But just speaking about, Blaine, this mammoth task of preparing the burial for His Majesty. I'm now joined by Nomfundo Mqoyi, and she is the CEO of Icebolethu Funerals, and they've been tasked with the responsibility of arranging and preparing the burial of the late king. Let me bring you in now, Sis Nomfundo. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak to us. I can't imagine when you received the call or how you were notified that your company would have been responsible for preparing the burial, collecting His Majesty's remains from Inkosi Albert Luthuli Hospital in Durban and bringing him here to your local mortuary. Just tell us about the process. I mean, this is just no ordinary. I know you conduct burials almost on a daily basis, but this is someone else.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Firstly, I just want to say condolences to the royal family and to the whole Zulu nation. It was such a very difficult task for myself from Friday last week when I received the call at 6 a.m. that the king is no more. As a Zulu girl, I was very emotional. It was such a very difficult period, but I had to do my task that I've been tasked with. From that moment up to Saturday when we brought the king to Nongoma, up to starting all the preparations for the entire send-off, it's been a very, very not difficult job, but it was a very great task because it needed a lot of meetings. When government is involved, some decisions, they take long to happen. We needed a bigger team to prepare the whole funeral. We needed, even from government itself, there was national, there was provincial, there was Icebeletu. We had to make sure everything was done properly. And having the king lie in our facilities, that was something else that was touching for myself as a CEO and the founder of this company. I never thought when I built that facility one day the king would lie there. But it was such a very difficult moment, but we had to do what we had to do, give the king a very dignified send-off up to the period when we have to take the king back home to his royal palace till we finished everything of the burial in the early hours of today. So we're still continuing with the service as it is about to start at 10 o'clock now.
So Stefan, I know that obviously there are certain rituals that have also been performed, and there's been a great interest in terms of what has been, what are those rituals? What are the procedures that are done? Were you involved in those, or your team allowed to be part of the rituals that had to be performed? And I know, as you were saying, as a Zulu girl, you'd know when we collect the body, there's certain rituals. When we bring the body home, there's certain rituals. And I can only imagine that obviously here with His Majesty, there's a lot more that needs to be done.
It was such an experience to see that every day when he lied in our facilities, Inyosi had to come and usher izibongo zakhe every morning and every afternoon. And it was like, it was a breakfast and dinner. For me, that was such an experience. There were other rituals that were performed. Obviously, I wouldn't know more about them because I'm a female. As a female in our Zulu nation, I couldn't go next to near the king. But our male staff was there, which is very, very qualified to make sure that the king was taken care of according to the family needs and what the family wanted to be done to the king.
And of course, you had to factor in COVID-19. We were aware that the king also had succumbed to complications related to COVID-19. So how difficult did that make the task?
It didn't make it that difficult because we've trained our staff. Icebeletu is an academy. We've trained our staff on all regulations, health regulations related to COVID-19. They knew exactly what to do. It's the same procedure. It's just that it was our king this time. The only thing it was that you have to be extra careful because we were carrying the pride of the nation, the pride of the Zulu nation. We had to make sure that it was done in a proper way. But it's the same thing.
And last night when the actual burial took place, was your team a part of that?
Yes, my team was a part. They wouldn't do it without my team. We had the entire team and also our team at the cemetery assisting because, some other things are done by undertakers. So they did what they had to do. But Amabutho were there. The family was there. We always allow families to do their traditions. We don't block that. As we understand and respect culture because we know we have different cultures as a Zulu nation. So we had to allow the royals to perform their cultures as well. But the team was there to make sure everything was properly done.
Thank you so much for your time. Playing there is the lady who was leading the team responsible for the preparation of the king's burial. And playing just very quickly, I'm looking around, the dignitaries continue to come through, and I just saw passing by a few minutes ago the military helicopter that we understand was bringing to KwaNongoma the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, who will then be driven here to the palace, and he'll be delivering the eulogy. Of course, Blaine, throughout the week we've had my colleagues who have been in different parts of KwaNongoma, and let's now cross to my colleague Vusi Kumalo.
Yes, indeed, and Mhlongo, we are here in town at Nongoma. Just a moment ago, we saw President Cyril Ramaphosa disembarking from the SANDF helicopter here at Nongoma. he was also being led by the entourage to KwaKhethomthandayo, whereby he'll be also delivering a keynote address in the name of the eulogy. We also understand that there are also quite a number of speakers, even though the program is very, very short. We are also expecting the traditional minister of KwaZulu, as well as the traditional prime minister of the King kaBhekuzulu Goodwill Zwelithini. With me are some of the jubilant community members who have seen the president here disembarking from the SNDF helicopter. Just a moment ago, there were scenes of jubilation, and he also waved at the crowd who were also here. There's also a school nearby here who also screamed, celebrating as well with the president while he was waving his hand to say that I can see you as well. So there was those screams. Part of those people who were there are also one gentleman here. Please Baba, start just introduce ukuthi kahle wena namhlanje siyabona ukuthi ujabule kakhulu ubona umengameli la nanokuthi ke omunye umbuzo kuthi nje kwena nje ukuhamba kwesilo njengomuntu obekade eqinisekisa ukuthi nina njengentsha niyakhula nibe izizulwane esi-responsible.
Siyintsha silimele kakhulu ukukhanjelwa ihlangano lomhlabathi ngoba ihlangano lomhlabathi I'm sure sikhona besenza wonke amandla ukuthi noma sikhuleka siyasibeka emikhulekweni njengentsha. Esikhathini samanje intsha siyintsha esisenkingeni kakhulu. Sithande futhi simagange singumphakathi sijabule kakhulu ukubona umongameli edilika lapha KwaKhethomthandayo. Sithi mongameli nimbeke kahle uhlangano lomhlabathi. Sithi ngumphakathi sijabule kakhulu.
Okay, sibonga kakhulu. Okay, wena uthi nje kafushane uzokubambela imali.
Kubhlungu khona kwahlelwa isilo sesamabandla, kodwa siyabonga ukuthi befike bezoxhasa bonke ngoba sibonile ikhulu zikhona zonke zifuna ukuzombeka endaweni yokugcina. Sibonga uthanda abatshengisile njengoba isilo sesamabandla. Kubhlungu khona inhliziyo zesichasa ibhlungu khona ngempela. Ngiyabonga.
Kade ubona umengameli sibonelani ijabule kakhulu nimbona umengameli enibingelele.
Usimbonile sijabule kakhulu kumbona ngamehlo sonke nathi sijele ukubona kwi-TV.
Kusho ukuthini nje kunina lokho ukuthi uhambelini indawo kaNongoma?
Kusho okukhulu kithi ngoba uhambele indawo eziphansi njengosuthando ngoba lapho kuhlala khona isilo sethu, isilo samabandla, naye ufikile naye uzokhombisa uthando. Sijabule kakhulu.
Okay, siyabonga kakhulu sis. Okay. These are the views of the community members, especially the youth, who are saying that this king also saw to it that they also grow as young, responsible people around this area. We know that the king also introduced a number of initiatives such as rite and ceremony, and also other cultures such as umkhosi wokweshwama for the boys as well. Thanks. It's back to you in the studio for now.
Well, thank you very much, Vusi Kumalo there, my colleague. We are still here outside KwaKhethomthandayo Royal Palace, where dignitaries continue to come for the memorial service of the late King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu. Just a short while ago, we saw the presidential convoy. President Cyril Ramaphosa has now arrived at the palace ahead of the memorial service. Let's not waste time and speak to the president of the IFP, Ubaba Uvelenkoseni Hlabisa. A lot has been said about the legacy that King Goodwill Zwelithini leaves behind. But as the IFP, how would you define his legacy?
Today is a great day in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal, and within the kingdom of the Zulu nation, where we all converge to pay last tribute to His Majesty the King. The IFP and the people of South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal will remember His Majesty for the legacy and the role he played. He revived the values, traditions, and culture of the African people who speak isiZulu. He revived the rite ceremony, which attracted many young maids across South Africa. This rite ceremony played a greater contribution in reducing the spread of HIV and AIDS. His Majesty will be remembered. He became a champion of education. He also became a champion in reviving the circumcision of young males. Circumcision plays a greater role because it reduces the rate of infection to a circumcised person as compared to the uncircumcised person. His Majesty the King will be remembered. He played a role in encouraging people to rely on agriculture, to use their hand to cultivate land, produce food of their daily livings. His Majesty was a champion of giving land to our people. He was in the forefront on Ingonyama Trust to ensure that the little remaining land in the hands of Amakosi under the custodian of His Majesty is given to our black people so that they have a full right to own land. His Majesty also became a champion when we were engulfed by the pandemic, the COVID-19. He stood up, he did not fold his arms and relax in the palace, but he stood up and became in the front line, talking to his subjects, postponing all ceremonies in 2020 to avoid super spreader events. He played a critical role in becoming a champion of ensuring that we fight against the spread of the pandemic. People comply with the health protocol to ensure that the spread of the pandemic is as minimum as possible. He led with wisdom, courage and compassion over a period of 50 years. He promoted peace. He believed in tolerance. He believed in coexistence between political parties. He leaves a vacuum which we believe the royal family will very soon fill by identifying and agreeing on a successor to lead the Zulu nation to continue with the legacy of His Majesty. We pray that his soul rest in peace, his great work remain for years and years in our country, giving a good lesson to our people. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
That's the leader of the IFP, Mr. Velenkosi Nihlabisa, basically unpacking the legacy of King Goodwill Zwelithini. I can also mention that among those who have also arrived at the palace is the KEF president, Mr. Patrice Mutsipe, as well as his wife. Dignitaries continue to come in their numbers. As you can see behind me, some of the vehicles already making their way inside the palace. The official program, Blaine, is going to be beginning shortly in about 10 or 15 minutes or so. At 10 o'clock, that's when then the president will deliver his eulogy to pay tribute to the late King Goodwill Zwelithini. Blaine?
Yes, Mpiwa, thank you very much indeed. We did see the arrival of President Cyril Ramaphosa a short while ago. He will be, as you mentioned, delivering the eulogy. We're also going to hear from Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Sihle Zikalala, as well as other speakers as well. The program directors for the official memorial service is Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, as well as Prince KwaZulu. So stand by for that. These are live visuals from inside there at the KwaKhethomthandayo Palace. That memorial service kicking off at 10 o'clock this morning. Stand by. We'll bring you all those live proceedings here on SABC News on all our various platforms. I want to bring in now Sophie Mokwena, our foreign editor, into this conversation. Sophie, firstly, before we talk about developments on the African continent, give us some international reaction to the bowing out of the king.
You heard earlier on, Blaine, that many leaders around the world did send their condolences to the royal family. I can also confirm that Princess Charlene from Monaco is around. She's likely to arrive any minute there at Nongoma. You know that she was very close to the family, and there were processes and arrangements for her to be regarded as a child of the family. But in Monaco, she calls herself the child of the late King Goodwill Zwelithini, and therefore the relations are very tight. You know that there are people from Botswana, the royal family from Botswana, the representatives, and also from Lesotho, from Zambia, from as far as Tanzania. Clearly, his influence stretched in the whole entire continent.
Speaking about Tanzania, the passing away of the president there, John Magufuli. What more, Sophie, are we learning with regards to the circumstances surrounding the death of the president?
It's not clear yet, but they link this to the health problem that he had, the heart problem, and they are saying it is the cause. But some people are not really accepting this explanation, because you know that on many occasions he was on the public platform talking about COVID-19 and not really supporting all the measures and the protocols that were recommended by the WHO in terms of what needs to be done, but rather preferring to the home remedies, to treat COVID-19 and saying that it is just a normal flu and ailment that can get to anybody. And therefore, there's no way the government of Tanzania will divulge the real cause. But we don't know. Maybe they will take this opportunity to really jack up their COVID-19 program. We saw the government on Monday saying that they have appointed a task team that will look at procurement of vaccines. While earlier on he had said that there's no way he's going to buy vaccines because vaccines can be poisonous.
I'm just looking at a report saying that the WHO has commended Tanzania this week for reverting to measures aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. Give us a sense of what the country is dealing with currently with regards to COVID-19. What more are we learning in terms of the numbers?
We don't know. The last time the country released the stats, it was in April last year. So you can imagine right now we don't know. That is why the director of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, did raise a concern that they can't really plan or understand what's happening on the ground because Tanzania doesn't share information. Dr. Matshidiso Moeti, also the WHO Sub-Sahara Director General, raised the same concerns. But this week she was happy to see that Tanzania was preparing to procure the vaccines. Maybe going forward we'll start seeing the government taking a different approach, and we'll see more information in terms of the impact of COVID-19 in Tanzania. But the president of Tanzania, John Magufuli, is no more, and the East Africa Community Chairperson, President Uhuru Kenyatta, has just addressed the nation. The Kenyan nation will also be in mourning in solidarity with Tanzania. We saw Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of UK, yesterday issuing a statement, and of course the President of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, issuing a statement this morning. Maybe when he gives an address to people who are attending memorial, he will touch on that.
All right, Sophie Mokoena, live for us there. Thank you very much indeed. Sophie Mokoena is our foreign editor. Back now to Nongoma. It's where we find my colleague Simpiwe Makanya there in conversation with a number of people that have come to pay their respects to the king that has bowed out. Simpiwe Makanya, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Blaine. A lot of dignitaries have certainly arrived now. I'm joined by the Minister of Police, Minister KwaKhethomthandayo. Makai, thank you very much for your time. I know that in the olden days, in the ANC days, during the political violence between the IFP as well as the ANC, you also were part of the part of those leaders who played a crucial role in creating the stability in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, together, of course, with His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini.
Well, indeed, we are coming from a very bloody bad situation in this province. I hope we don't forget it, but again, I hope we don't allow it to come back. For me, it's a distinct two era. that His Majesty, I didn't work with him much before the elections of 1994, but after that, as you know, that I've been on the security matters for a very long time, even in this province. We worked very closely until the very last days, almost towards the end of his life, not knowing that that's going to happen. Even in December, we went to Enyogeni Palace to launch the Royal Police. We spent the whole day on that. But on the issues of political violence, he opened the space for all political parties and was very adamant to say any and everybody that wants to come here and have his political activists is allowed in this province.
Minister, also leading up to today's memorial service, we saw large crowds of people gathered. Amabuto also leading those people who gathered outside the palace. It has been difficult, though, to actually manage the numbers of people to adhere to the lockdown regulations.
No doubt about that, especially outside the precincts of the palace. In the palace, we've tried to do our work. We're still trying. So yesterday we saw on the marquees, we invited the health people, the emergency. They give us the measurements, how many people will be there. I think we're very fine there. Unfortunately, outside, it will be really difficult to stop people on the road as they are coming in the situation where it's not very much under control of the like the internal or like the inside situation. But we did try to speak. Minister Mkhize, Minister Dlamini Zuma and myself have been here, and Chabin, we have been here sometimes trying to negotiate, make people to understand that we are not only here for crime, we are also here for regulation. And the king has said it, that he would not love his going. His going becomes the burden to his subjects, having more people to die. That's the thing we explain. Fortunately, some people, they understand. Unfortunately, some don't understand that this thing is still upon us and is a second enemy that will have to work hard on stopping it so that we don't have many people dying after this.
Okay, that's the Minister of Police, Minister KaBhekuzulu, admitting, of course, that it has been difficult for members of the South African Police Service to manage the large crowds of people who have been gathering outside the various izigodlos of the silo. Let me just move out of the shot to give you an indication now of what is currently happening. Obviously, the memorial service is going to be beginning shortly now. Most of the dignitaries who are expected to arrive have arrived, and they are now beginning to wait for the commencement, which is going to be taking place at exactly 10 o'clock. Blaine?
Yeah, Simpiwe, I was just listening to the technical briefing yesterday by Lennox Mabaso and giving us an insight of what we can expect today, some of the do's and some of the don'ts, the protocols that follow in an event like this. And I guess it's a balance of tradition as well as what comes with a category funeral that was, remember, declared by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Give us some of the do's and don'ts, some of the protocols that will be observed today at this memorial service.
Well, certainly, Blaine, as you enter the entrance, I'm just going to ask my colleague to show you the situation here at the main entrance where you enter the palace. You can already see a large crowd of people negotiating their way inside the palace. But of course, it is a controlled occasion where one has to produce accreditation to actually see to it that the required number of people is actually observed. But I can certainly tell you that it is not going to be easy for members of the SAPS to ensure that the required number is actually observed, judging by the high number of people who have already been allowed to enter the premises of the palace. Blaine?
You know, you get a sense over the past couple of days that there's this melancholy that prevails in Nongoma, and not only in that place, but around the country as well. This king was loved, But also, you know, you got a sense yesterday when we were watching the visuals that there was this sense of celebration. One would put it as celebrating the king's legacy as well. Give us the temperature of views in terms of how people are reacting to all of this. As for some, it's new. The last AmaZulu king was planted back in the 1960s, if I recall the date correctly. It was 1968. So this is relatively likely a first for many South Africans observing this. But talk to us about some of the views you got from people witnessing this.
A lot of people, Blaine, have expressed their sadness. A lot of people have expressed their appreciation in how King Goodwill Zwelithini led AmaZulu for a number of initiatives that he began and also that he resuscitated. But with me, Blaine, is one of those people who have been very vocal on social media, urging people to come out in their numbers and pay their last respects to the king. I'm talking about Ungezwe Mchunu. Machungwane, thank you very much for your time, Baba. What does your presence here mean today?
It means the historical moment that will never take place in our lifetime. So we really appreciate your presence as well, so that you can witness the history, because this is the history of the Zulu nation that has been existed in more than 200 years. Do you remember in 2016 that the Zulu nation has in their existence for 200 years? We celebrated 200 years together as the Zulu nation after King Shaka isilo sawadokoza. Manje we are here to witness that the king Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu umbongiziyozwa uchaliwe namhlanje izolo ebusuku. So we would like to make sure that as we respect and honor all the rules and regulations about corona, but as we are already dead as a nation, we can never die twice. As a nation, we are already dead, losing our own king. If it means the corona was brought here in Africa to kill us during this time, it may as well happens. So that we know that we are the part of history as young people, and we are encouraging everyone that Nongoma has been very vocal. I am the ambassador of the first initiative after he have revived the circumcision, the medical circumcision, that knows that the king understand that the different times now are different. Unlike other kings who just allow everyone to die because of that they are practicing their ritual or culture. The culture must also be goes with times, so that we can encourage anyone that we are the Zulus, we are all circumcised. I am the ambassador, and I am Izinyosi as a part of Ibuto Lawazulu that was formed after 1 million people. No one have ever died during those circumstances because of the king Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu that we have buried yesterday. So therefore, as the entire nation of the Zulus, they must know and write down the history of yesterday, where we march from what in Zulu as Kodweni until here with the body of our own king, of our own loved one. We wish the bright future for the entire Zulu nation, and the only way to remember our own king is respect and know your culture, and to unite all the tribe and nation and be exemplary to other tribes and to other cultures that are here in South Africa. Because if you look at Limpopo, Botswana and Mansonga, they need to learn something from us, not just to say that our Zulus are violent. We are not violent. We are united. We know what we want. We are here to make history.
Machungwane, ngiyazi ukuthi indoda eyigagu nazi insizwa zikakile awushaye nje umuntu owodwa mfowethu sileke sikuzo.
Uyamemeza kandaba winkosi yohla. Winkosi yamakho. Winkosi yohla. Wena wendlovu. Wena wendlovu. Ade. igatshele phuma eqhuni kade bekuvalele uhloko manje vukudla amadoda uyakhumbula ukuthi umbumbe sizwe samaZulu eke iyona inkosana kasenza ngakhona ushaka ngiyesaba ukuthi ngushaka uteko labafazi bolo mgabi belitekula behleze emlovini bede akubusa akabenkosi kanyaka nesawunethezeka udlambedlu oludiludla isanga sedlango semadolweni ugasana lokandaba inyathe evimbe ngomkhonto phezulu komzimbubu namasondo hayesaba kuyehlela nani bofaku nani bokambushe ukuma ngamthinti kuba senemthintele nathinta uphunga nathinta umageba. Learn something from us, you will have a bright future.
Okay, that's one of the people who have come here to actually remember the king's legacy. Ungezwe wakwamchunu. Blaine, it's back to you in Johannesburg for now.
Yeah, let's just talk a bit more about the King's legacy as we watch live visuals with regards to the memorial service. We'll take you there straight as soon as it starts. But Simpiwe, help us understand the value of peace and social cohesion in KwaZulu-Natal and the understanding of the dynamics around political parties and sensitivities of citizens. We will bring Ayanda shortly to explain this. Simpiwe has needed to get to another spot, so we'll bring in Ayanda Mhlongo shortly with regards to the value of peace and social cohesion in KwaZulu-Natal and the role that Isilo Samabandla played in that, in launching something called the KwaZulu-Natal Public Peace Process. And this initiative, I understand, was firstly acknowledges that the peace is not an event but a process that goes far beyond public relations and sponsored initiatives. It also acknowledges that peace among institutions does not necessarily translate into citizens' peace. So it's something that was very close to the King's heart in terms of peace and social cohesion in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Something that we've learnt over the years in terms of the King's stance in certain issues. Let's bring in Ayanda Mhlongo live for us in KwaKhethomthandayo just before the official memorial starts. Ayanda, talk to us about what you're hearing regarding the King's legacy.
Beg your pardon, I couldn't hear the Blaine. Could you please repeat the question?
Just with regards to the interactions that you've had over the past couple of days, talk to us about how it informs your opinion, or rather, what you're learning more about the King's legacy.
Well, Blaine, everyone who has been here has shared their interactions, shared with us and reflected on the life and the work of the King and the legacy that he leaves behind. Maybe let me start with the people of Nongoma. The King was born and bred here in this rural part of KwaZulu-Natal, went to school here, and has been known by the people of this area. And for them, Blaine, many of them that we have spoken to speak about a king who deeply cared for his people, speak about a king who wanted to see growth and who wanted to see development. For them, his legacy, the culture that he leaves behind, for the fact that he revived old age traditions like Umkhoswe the reed dance, the traditional reed dance. They remember him for those, and the role that these ceremonies or these celebrations play in terms of moral regeneration, playing particularly directed at young people, at encouraging young people. And part of it, the King was very much involved in promoting education amongst the youth. So these events were not just cultural events that were revived to ensure that the young girls remain virgins, but in it there are also a lot of lessons that these young maidens or young girls are being taught. Equally playing with the men as well. And I know there's often a lot of focus on the maidens and the girls, and one might think that the King paid no attention to the men. In fact, he did. He was an advocate against gender-based violence. At a time as well, at the start of every year, the King would bring together the young men and would into his kraal. He would select a palace, usually at Enyogeni Palace. The young men would go into the kraal, and that would be the opportunity that the King would have to speak to them. His son, Prince Ntlanganiso, was also telling telling us how his father groomed them to be strong, responsible young men, but also importantly how to take care of women. So in terms of the community, that is what he leaves behind, but also playing in terms of development as well. Just driving around Nongoma and how we've seen the town, as small as it is, as rural as it is, but it is really starting to grow. He would speak to investors, he would speak to the government to ensure that there was a development. One of the other projects that he brought to this area, and not far from where we are, is an area called Kwamona, which was an area that was set aside for the traders, for the hawkers, and people as far as Mozambique, Swaziland now come to sell their trade here at that area, and that was a project that was started by the king. So that, in terms of the people of this area, that is the legacy that he leaves behind. As a custodian of Zulu culture, tradition and customs, he has left them with a rich culture, he's left us with rich traditions, and then of course playing as an advocate for development, and the king has also left a legacy that people will now be able to build on.
He was also called a champion of cultural diversity, Ayanda, also a champion of harmony. Talk to us about how we use culture to forge unity among citizens of all races and religions.
Well, one key example of that, Ben, and I'm going to take you back to the annual read dance. You'd know that what the king did was we would extend an invitation to other young maidens from neighboring countries, from Eswatini and other ethnic groups here in South Africa. He would invite them to be part of that ceremony. In fact, we also saw at some parties brought in the Indian community. And one year when I attended the read dance playing, we had young ladies that were coming from Germany and other countries in Western Europe, and with that giving them an opportunity to also speak. Some of them had the opportunity to dance and to explain what the Indian dance was about, explain what the Indian culture was, and vice versa for these young maidens, for them to be able to explain to their guests what their culture was, what the beads that they were wearing were. So that for him was how he practically tried to merge cultures together. We know that he was also invited to many events of different cultures. I think, if I remember, Blaine, and you would remember this, he was the first monarch to actually pay a visit to a mosque in Durban. And so with that, the king was working on social cohesion, building tolerance and understanding amongst the different cultures.
Yeah, he was very, very involved in something known as the Festival of Lights, Diwali, as well. So there again, bridging the divides in terms of race groups, in terms of culture, tradition, etc., etc. Also, a avid conservationist, Ayanda, a caretaker, one would say, of nature. Isilo Samabandla was at the forefront in the war against rhino poaching as well.
The network is a bit bad here, Blaine, but I heard you, I think, speak about conservation. Oh, certainly, Blaine. The king would hold a ceremony. He was very much involved with, for example, here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, with Ezemvelo Wildlife, where he would go out to the various game reserves and would meet with local communities on conservation. In fact, he launched a campaign at some point to ensure that people would understand certain plants and certain trees, at what stage to cut those trees, at what stage not to cut them. And also in terms of nature, we know very well, Blaine, that we have a huge problem of poaching here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And so the king also took that campaign against poaching, and in the various various areas that he would go to, he would spend time speaking to the community and educating them on nature conservation. So certainly, Blaine, that was something that the king understood very well, and it was quite close to his heart. And again, that is while we were here, Blaine, in fact, we had some of the local game reserves, the management of some of the local game reserves, Uhlulwe Game Reserve, Babanangu Game Reserve. They were also here to come and convey their condolences to the royal family, and also just speaking about how the king, apart from conservation, but also in tourism, how he was an ambassador, one could say, Blaine, for local tourism. When he went abroad, when he interacted with the dignitaries in other countries, he would always make mention to encourage international guests and visitors to come through to KwaZulu-Natal, speak to them about our culture, speak to them about the beautiful nature of KwaZulu-Natal. So certainly you are correct there, Blaine. He was, one would say, an ambassador for conservation and an ambassador for tourism.
If you just joined us, we're live from KwaKhethomthandayo in Nongoma, KwaZulu-Natal. This is the official memorial service of the AmaZulu King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu. A very, very warm welcome to our SABC 2 viewers as well. I'm in conversation with my colleague who's live for us in Nongoma there, Ayanda Mhlongo. She's been covering this for us over the past couple of days. The memorial service is likely to kick off anytime soon. 10 o'clock was the time we were given. We are expecting speakers such as Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, also on behalf of His Majesty's siblings, Princess Thembi Ndlovu. We're also expecting the Premier Sihle Zikalala to give some remarks, and the eulogy will be delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic. We're talking about the legacy of King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu, Isilo Samabandla. Let's bring in Ayanda Mhlongo back into the conversation. Ayanda, I was just talking to some people, Makani, a little earlier on with regards to the value of peace and social cohesion in KwaZulu-Natal, and the King's understanding about the dynamics around political parties and the sensitivity of citizens. He launched something called the KwaZulu-Natal Public Peace Process. Talk to us about the times of conflict in the province and what role the King played in quelling the tensions.
Our connection is a bit bad there, Blaine. I do apologize for that to our viewers as well. I picked up the word peace and conflict that you were asking me about, and I hope that I heard you correctly.
Correct.
But before, Blaine, I get into that, I'm being told that the former president, Jacob Zuma, has also arrived as one of the dignitaries that will be attending this memorial service. Yeah, Blaine, the King has played a very, very key role when it comes to peace, stability in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. And I'm going to speak specifically about the area in which we are in, Nongoma. You'd note that for many, many years, this was a stronghold of a particular party, and it became difficult for other parties to even be able to come into Nongoma to campaign. I do remember at some point the then chair of the IEC, Brigadier Bam, having to come here to on a voter education drive, but also specifically to meet the political parties. It was a very, very difficult time, and it then took the King, Blaine, to call the meet with the different political parties, and for them to be then be able, or those that were unable to come into this area, to do a simple thing, to campaign. And it was the King who then took it upon himself to call these political parties that were feuding, to sit them down, to iron out the differences. And it was after then that the one could say the gates then opened, and today Nongoma is an area where any party can come in and campaign. So that is just speaking about this particular particular area. The tensions here playing were very, very high. It was an extremely volatile area. And ourselves, at one point, I do remember that we came here to accompanying one of the other political parties, and we were shot at when we were leaving. And it was after those scenes which had been shown on SABC that the king then decided it was important that the week after, if my mind serves me correctly, if I remember correctly, he then called the political parties. So he certainly has played a very, very big role. And plain, this was evident if you see the numbers of the political parties, the political party leaders. We saw the senior leaders of the ANC, the Treasurer Paul Mashatile, Secretary General Ace Makashule. We saw the leader of the EFF and his executive, Julius Malema. We saw just now, my colleague Simpiwe was speaking to Velinkosini Hlabisa, the president of the IFP, and smaller parties, the ATM, the NFP, many other parties, the Democratic Alliance as well. These are all party leaders that have come here to pay their respects, and all of them sharing the same sentiments, playing that for them as political parties, the role that the king has played to make KwaZulu-Natal conducive for them to be able to carry out their work.
Right. During the time of COVID, one of the drawbacks or setbacks for us as broadcasters is that it's very difficult to identify people who are masked up. But in your shot previously there, I thought I saw Princess Charlene from Monaco. So, you know, it goes to show the words that were that are used to describe the king was statesman, culturist, philanthropist, a patriot, as well as internationalist. And we've heard from our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, talking about the impact or the legacy and the respect he garnered from those abroad as well. So Princess Charlene from Monaco, there present at this official memorial service of King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu. I had to talk to us about his work, his role in health, especially being the champion or championing the war against HIV and AIDS. Also with regards to what we're dealing with currently, the COVID-19 pandemic. Talk to us about his role with regards to health.
Well, when we speak about HIV and AIDS, the king has received commendation from some of the world's biggest organization, the United Nations, that commended King Goodwill Zwelithini for his efforts in curbing the spread against HIV and AIDS. And this is a campaign that he started many years ago. I was just going through some archives recently when he was with our late former president Nelson Mandela down in Adams Mission, south of Durban, and there the two were discussing the HIV and AIDS campaign. And there, when the king was addressing the community that had come out, he took to the stage, and instead of delivering it was an opening of a community hall, and instead of speaking about the community hall, the king immediately, his entire speech was about the scourge that South Africa and the world was dealing with, and particularly here in KwaZulu-Natal. And from then, he started this campaign of urging men to circumcise. Yeah. Thereafter, in 2009, he again then made the call, having worked with the health department, then made a call that men must be circumcised, but those circumcisions must be done medically. And months later, we understand almost 1 million men had been circumcised here in KwaZulu-Natal. He also then urged for greater education around Nongoma. There are still very old billboards that also speak on awareness around HIV and AIDS. And then again, coming now to the COVID-19 challenge that we are faced with. The king this year, prior to him having gone into hospital, in fact last year, maybe let me go back, there were certain events that are annual traditions that should have taken place, but the king was concerned, and he then issued a statement to his subjects to say that all celebrations and events which would see mass gatherings had to be postponed. Understanding what the regulations, he understood clearly the regulations. It was part of the message that he was spreading for people to be conscious, for people to take care, and for people to be safe. And this has also been shown plain throughout the week. Having been here, the royal family has continuously insisted that they do not want this event that is taking place here to be a super spreader, and so they've been urging as best as they could for people to stay away. And Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, in his capacity as the traditional prime minister, again repeated that this was not for him. This was in fact the message that the king had been saying. The king was very, very concerned about COVID-19, and as a result he himself had taken the necessary precautions to ensure that his subjects were safe. Blaine?
The voice of Fayenda Mhlongo, live from KwaKhethomthandayo, Nongoma, KwaZulu-Natal. These are live visuals from the official memorial service of Isilo Samabandla. We await the start of this. There you see in your shot Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi taking his seat. We see there the President of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa, greeting Nkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi, greeting Princess Charlene of Monaco, interacting there with the President as well. We have our reporters fanned out across the province in the town of KwaNongoma. Let's bring in Vusi Khumalo. He's standing by. Vusi, what are you seeing there? We have our reporters fanned out across the province.
Good morning, Blaine, as well as the viewers. We know that as people continue to stream in, especially the dignitaries, continue to stream in to Nongoma, some of the areas, many parts of Nongoma, we have seen quite a lot of, marquees where they've been erected around the areas of Nongoma, KwaKhethomthandayo, as well as Nongoma town, where I am currently at now, with a number of people who are also watching SABC news, which we are bringing you this live here at Nongoma town. Just a moment ago, President Cyril Ramaphosa disembarked from the SNDF helicopter. We saw people screaming with jubilation, seeing the president disembarking, and also with his entourage going all the way to KwaKhethomthandayo, where the memorial service is taking place, the special official funeral taking place today. So people here are also saying that they are also celebrating the life and times of Ongange Zwelakhe, because he has taught them a number of things. Especially he was very, very vocal in the issues of development and also about corruption. So the people here at KwaNongoma are saying that they are also celebrating his life. With me are some of the community members who have not been able to make their way to KwaKhethomthandayo. As you know that they have their marquees erected around this area so that they can view the proceedings, especially here at KwaNongoma town. Let me talk to one of them here. Baba sicela nje usintroduce kafushane ukuthi namhlanje nikwazile ukuthi ningayi lapha ngenxa isimo se-COVID-19, nikwazile ukuthi nihloniphe lo mbandela kahulumeni nakho namhlanje nila kwi-public viewing area. Igama nesibongo oqala.
Igama lami ngisicela Mkhwanazi emasundweni KwaNongoma, sicela Mkhwanazi emasundweni. Ukuthi singayi lapha isimo ebesifoqa ukuthi singafinyeleli siye sonke lapha ukuthi sifike lapha nathi sikhale njenganabantu bonke, njengoba nathi silahlekelwe kakhulu. Ngiyacabanga ke nokuthi ke eSouth Africa, KwaZulu-Natal noma umhlaba wonke nathi sikhona la erenkini kuyimboni eyamatekisi nathi sishaye ingozi engenkiwantwala njengoba empeleni bekuwumuntu behlala edlula la kodwa nathi besinezinga lokuthi uma kukhona yena siphelele suZulu kwaNongoma. uNkulunkulu ke siyamethemba kakhulu nokuthi ke noma esesishiyile ngendlela akasishiye ngayo uNkulunkulu bese sekufike usuku uNkulunkulu ke uzoba nathi noma sihleli kanjena umhlaba udunguzela kodwa ke ithemba enye inkosi sizobuye sithole inkosi eyofana njengaye kwaNongoma uthi ke uNkulunkulu ke nendlunkulu nayo indlunkulu yonke siyayikhalela simboni yamatekisi umphakathi owalapha kwaNongoma.
Yes, he's saying briefly here that as the taxi industry, they are deeply hurt, and he is also saying that they really respect Babu Ongangezwe lakhe yethe kwaNongoma. He's also saying that some of the things that he did for the taxi industry was to ensure that they do maintain, safety, especially in the area of Nongoma. Let's just talk to one of the lady who has been part of the Rich Dance that was obviously reintroduced by Ongangezwe lakhe. Sisi nje kafushane nina njenge youth lapha njengegenge entsha nikwazile ukuthi nihlale ngentombi imfundiso zesilo zonke lezi.
Igama lami nguThembeka wakwaNgubane Osuthu. Isikhathaze kakhulu and siphatheke kabi kakhulu ngokushiya ubaba. Iningi izinto babe besasifundise zona sikhathazeke kakhulu ngempela and sibuhlungu kakhulu. Inhliziyo zethu ziyalila futhi nokuphumula ngibona ukuthi sizokuthola. Ubaba usifundisile ukuziphatha njengamantombazane, wasifundisa ubaba ukuthi sizigcine sizihlale njengentombi njengokuhlukunyezwa.
All right, Vusi, thank you very much indeed. We'll have to leave there. Isilo Samabandla has been credited for not only transcending history by reviving and promoting age-old cultural heritage, but also building a traditional governance institution that is compatible with a democratic age. The memorial service has started. Let's go there now live.
Sengizobiza umntwana uqedi uzosiphathela indima yokuqala yohlelo. Ngiyabonga.
Benkosi Benkulu Mama Wesilo Yana wakaphinda ngene President Ramaphosa Baba Jacob Zuma